All right, everyone, I have a little bit of a frog in my throat today. I think it's because of the weather, like the weird weather that we're having. I'm certainly not sick. I feel fine. We got to talk about Bernie Sanders because there is scuttlebutt saying that he's actually planning to enter the race, and the number of disadvantages he has are astonishing. But he's got a large enough core fan base, 20-25% of the Democrats that would march into the grave for him, which they might get the chance because he's like, a Marxist. That would basically do anything for him. They're highly activistic, especially online, and they're younger voters. Now that means turnout might be lower, but Sanders has enough charisma, I think, to get him to the polls. So if he gets in, and it's not yet certain, this is speculative. There was a Yahoo News story saying, a couple people close to him are saying, yeah, he's planning to get in fairly soon. He references apparently the polls with regards especially to African American and Hispanic voters, saying that he's actually ahead of all the other Democrats. Now remember, that was something he had a problem with against Clinton. Clinton is a powerhouse name when it comes especially to inner city voters that tend to be, majority minority. Sanders had trouble, but you don't have Clinton in the race and probably won't, so that's apparently reversed itself. He looked at those polls, I think, and looked at the field and said, well, this is going to be easy. And he might be right. He could very well become the Democratic nominee. Yes, you may get your wish and get to see Trump defeat Bernie Sanders in 2020, which is probably what would happen. Here's the problem. The number of disadvantages that Bernie Sanders has are simply staggering. His fans don't want to believe it, but that's because they're socialists. They don't understand reality. You got to realize the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are not random samplings of the whole national consensus. They are samplings of partisan consensus, generally speaking, ideological consensus that deviates from the mean. The left has deviated over the last couple of decades far further than the right. The right sticks stubbornly close to the center right. The left is going further and further into left field. They're getting into Carter territory. Well, that became a problem the last time this happened, and it did. It happened before. In the JFK era, they didn't have their problem. Then they get cocky. They start getting true hyper-liberalism in there. Ronald Reagan comes along and smashes him, and Trump's a lot like Ronald Reagan. Again, a lot of people don't want to analyze it that way, but they're living in delusionary land. I've been analyzing politics now for several years, and some people are getting spooked by the accuracy. That's because you got to realize there's a difference between a partisan consensus and the national consensus. That's why 2016 happened the way it did. The Clinton voters were off their rocker. The first disadvantage is his age. It's the most obvious. He's 77, he's almost 78 years old. He would be, I think he'd turn 79 before taking the office. He would die in office, almost certainly. A lot of presidents die in office because of the stress of the job. He better have a good fucking running mate. And you can imagine that would be the first thing, if he becomes the nominee, the first thing people say is, well, Trump's old enough as is. He's the oldest person to be in the presidency. Older than Reagan when he started his job. If he gets a second term, he'll be almost an octogenarian when he leaves. Bernie Sanders would be an octogenarian halfway through his fucking first term. He'd be almost 90 if he wins a second term, which won't happen. He'd be 87 years old. What are you talking about? No, we don't want someone that's that elderly. Look at the world stage and the age of world leaders. There aren't many of them that are octogenarians. There's a reason for that, because there aren't many octogenarians. People tend to fucking start dying around 75. What's the average lifespan for a male in the U.S.? It's like 74 years old or something, and unfortunately falling because of stupidity. Yeah, okay. Trump's known for sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night and going to 3 or 4 different rallies in a single day in 4 different states. Is Bernie Sanders at his age going to be able to do that? No. Ice cream, all the ice cream in the world's not going to give him enough energy to do that. So his age is the first big impediment. That would become a national debate over whether it's proper to have a president who is geriatric. No other president's been truly geriatric. Old, yes, 70, 71. Geriatric is you're over 75. Trump will hit that point in his second term. Assuming that he actually runs, which, he's announced that he will. That's his first problem. The second problem is Bernie Sanders is a white male. There are increasingly large numbers of Democrats who refuse to vote for a white male. They think that they're evil and horrible and everything wrong. The fact that Sanders is far left or wants to give people free shit is not going to compel a lot of those ideological voters for whom race and gender really are the things that they vote on. They'll vote for, they would vote for a Republican female probably, over a Democratic white male at this point, some of them. And there are Republicans that think the same way. This isn't unique to the Democratic Party. You look at the identitarian movement. Yes, I'm sure a lot of them would vote for Michelle Obama for mayor or something. People think that way, and it's like, whatever. I don't, but some people do. I'd rather look at the platforms, the ideology, and more importantly, the history of the person. Have they been consistent, or did they only just start supporting the things they say they like yesterday, like Hillary Clinton did? Again, big problem. Sanders is remarkably efficient at making it clear to people that, yeah, for the last, 50 years I've had the same beliefs. I got a track record here, A, B, and C. He's right. The problem is, and there's the third disadvantage, he's a socialist. What do we know about the Rust Belt Democrats? They already weren't taken in by corporate neoliberalism. Are they going to be taken in by socialism? The youth of the United States might be tilting further enough to the left so that they're like, oh, maybe Marxism isn't such a bad thing. Yeah, you think the 40 and 50-year-old Union Democrats in Michigan are going to think that way? When Trump's already given them tax relief, deregulation, and brought back some jobs to their areas? The recovery is starting to hit those areas, and it's wavered a little bit over time, but, I think that they're going to prefer the dude who's at least trying and who has had some positive effect for their communities over someone who's espousing a financial sort of system that simply doesn't work for anyone. Now, we can see, and Venezuela, oddly enough, could be another disadvantage for him. Avowedly socialist country, one Sanders, has spoken well of before. He sort of spoke well of Chavez at the time when he was in charge. It's collapsing. So the primaries are on, blah, 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 Bernie Sanders ahead, he becomes nominee, general election starts and Venezuela collapses. Oh, says Trump, did you see the other day that wonderful socialist country? And here's a quote from you 10 years ago praising their government. They just collapsed, Bernie. That's what he wants to bring here, America. That's going to be worth some good political points now, isn't it? Another disadvantage that Bernie Sanders has is simply the fact that there are a lot of bitter Hillary Clinton voters. It's her turn. Glass ceiling. Vote for mammary glands that won't vote for him. I guarantee that hundreds of thousands or even millions of Democrats will jump out of the party and refuse to back him if he's the nominee, simply because a lot of Bernie Sanders voters didn't back Hillary Clinton. They will punish the Democratic Party. And then, by the way, there are going to be some Bernie voters that won't even back him to begin with because they're like, I think something's fishy here. The DNC must be in cahoots with Trump. Because remember, they shafted him and coordinated Hillary last time around. So the number of disadvantages is astonishing, and I would definitely use my platform against Bernie Sanders, absolutely. I would harangue pretty much every other day during the election. Yeah, you should vote for Trump. Yeah, oppose Bernie Sanders. He's crazy and old and washed up. Why? Hell, he wants to massively increase my taxes to pay for shit for other people. When you say free shit, I say, hey, subsidized by the productive component of society. Do you think for a minute that Bernie Sanders will ever have the political power, even if he had the willpower, to reform the tax code to make Apple pay its fair share? Or Microsoft or any of these other companies that offshore and use tax schemes to pay 2-3% on money they should owe 30 or 40% on? Do you honestly think that he will ever accomplish that? He wouldn't get a second term even if he survived his first and decided to run again. Guaranteed. Because his own voters will see that he's basically just an ideological fool. He'd be obstructed from day one. The Republicans, by the way, Republicans on the state level, having already a legislative advantage and a gubernatorial advantage in a significant proportion, they'll be able to campaign on the state level, which people will ignore because they'll be fixated on the national race. Because Trump plus Sanders, nobody else is getting any attention. The Republicans will take advantage of that and they will win back. Not only will they win back the House, it'll be by a massive majority. They will stymie from day one. He'll be completely lame duck. He will accomplish nothing. They won't compromise. They won't negotiate. But, and by the way, by then you might have, Trump may have stacked the Supreme Court with another right-wing justice anyway. What the fuck do you think you're going to accomplish? Nothing. It's never going to happen. So Bernie Sanders can absolutely, there's a 50-50 chance at least that he'd become the nominee, but he'd get beaten up by Trump. Trump would say, look, I lowered your taxes, deregulated trade deals and stuff. He wants to adopt communism. So, choice is cut and dry, people. Nothing says whipping up the Republicans into a frenzy like giving in... The Republicans back in the 90s and 2000s, take this for consideration, used to say, well, the Democrats are becoming socialist. And the Democrats looked askance to that label like a plague. Said, no, we're just liberals. No, we're progressive. No, I lean left on some things, but stop using this dirty word of socialism. All those arguments are going to come back to haunt the Democrats so much if Bernie Sanders becomes their nominee. Trump's like, I endorse populism. I'm like a Reagan Republican. I want to take the country back 20 years. He wants to take it back 2 centuries. That's what he's going to say, and it's going to work. That's a winning sort of slogan right there. Your ideology comes from Karl Marx in the 1830s. My ideology comes from relative modernity. You know, people had like TVs and, you know, didn't always die in infancy. So, you pick a platform, people. And by the way, having a socialist in the Democratic Party, that's really going to help. It'll really help the libertarian vote, too. A lot of those Democrats that aren't taken in by that shows, I think the party's lost its mind, and I'm not going to vote green. I'm just going to go vote libertarian. Because I won't back Trump, most of them. Now, they might do a protest vote. Now, if you think that Trump is a weak candidate, once he gets matched up against someone, again, a geriatric socialist, with all of those disadvantages. And also, the Democratic Party already tried to torpedo him. Remember with the brief Me Too thing, they're like, oh, Bernie Sanders didn't explain enough about the sex scandals in his campaign. Now, of course, that was bullshit. There are sex scandals in any campaign. It's just that the neoliberal Clinton media decided to aim fire on him in hopes of keeping him out of the race. Maybe he looked at that and he said, okay, you want to play fucking tough? I'm going to get into the fucking race and drain all these neoliberals, become the candidate and probably lose, but it'll be a funny time. Ha ha, I got one over on the DNC that screwed me in 2016, which they did. I mean, come on. I don't see anyone in the Dem field right now that can beat him. Biden might stay out because of it. Biden would be probably the only one that could match him. I mean, Elizabeth Warren can't. She's DOA if she gets into the race, let's face it, because she's got 3 other much younger, more likable females to oppose. That's really, if you're going for the vote for me, I have a vagina sort of platform, it's not going to work when you have to oppose Kamala Harris, Tulsi Gabbard, and Kirsten Gillibrand, all of which are under 55. Kamala Harris, isn't she like not even 40 yet? Like, is she even eligible? I think someone said she was born to, not born on U.S. soil. It was like a Ted Cruz style situation or something like that. Or both of her parents were foreigners. I can't remember exactly. It might have been Gabbard, actually, that I'm thinking of. I know it wasn't Gillibrand. She's born and bred in New York. By the way, so is Sanders. You say, oh, he's a Vermonter. No, he's a New Yorker. He's from Brooklyn, dude. He spent his young life in Brooklyn, gets educated, comes to Vermont for educational purposes, and decides to stay like a parasite. Now, he does a good job of representing this state. Now, look at Vermont's economy in the debate. We can't even get like 10 miles of railroad built. You want to export that to the national stage? Vermont works because it's a high-tax tourist enclave where people are just like, well, Vermont or Vermont pride and stuff, and I guess I'll stay here. All of our young move off to other states. Yeah, you put that on a national level, they'll be moving off to other countries. Yeah, you'll reverse all the economic progress that Trump's made. Yes, I would use my platform every single day to do as much as possible to rally people against a Bernie Sanders if he becomes the nominee. In fact, the only person I wouldn't be too pissed about, and I'd say, well, if they win, whatever, would be Gillibrand. Again, Kirsten Gillibrand is the sane person currently running. Or technically, in some ways, Tulsi Gabbard, although I'm, pro-gay marriage, so I guess on that I would actually be further left than the Dem nominee if she got in. She's like, oh, yeah, gay is not okay. Yeah, that was only 15 years ago. A lot of Democrats had already latched onto it as a social issue. She was still a holdout. I mean, beyond like even civil union people like Obama and Clinton. Is really funny. That's about all. Peace out.